Hello and welcome to DE's live lesson for Science Week. I'm Matt Wilshire and I'm going to be guiding you through this live lesson. The theme for Science Week this year is change and adapt. We're going to be learning all about remarkable reptiles and their changes over time. And of course, I'm joined by the lovely Mike Linley, our expert zoologist, who has got some amazing reptiles to show us. Thankfully, these creatures are protected and looked after by Mike in special conditions here in Norfolk. And Mike also knows how to handle them, so I won't be touching them or picking them up. Mike will be taking a lead on that. Before all of that, a big thank you to all of the schools joining us from across the country. It would be really lovely to see which schools exactly are joining us. So please, if you can, write your school and your class name and say hello. Hello especially to all at Potton Primary who are joining us today. There will be different activities for you to complete throughout the lesson. You can fill these in on the handout, which should be provided by your teacher. Now, whilst we prepare to explore some of these amazing reptiles, have a quick discussion with your class. How long have reptiles been roaming the earth? Make a guess and put your response in the chat. Take a moment to do that now. Welcome back. How did you get on with your first discussion question? Now, Mike is going to be able to give us the answer. So Mike, what's the answer?
Well, the first reptiles appeared 320 or 300 million years ago. So they've been around a long time. And it's because of their ability to adapt and change that they've conquered virtually every habitat on Earth, apart from mountaintops, the deep ocean and the polar regions.
Right, let's take a closer look at some of the amazing features of the reptiles that we see today. Which reptile are we going to have a look at first?
Well, this is a leopard gecko. It might be familiar to most of you out there because this is commonly kept as a pet in this country. They breed very well, they live a long time, 20 or 30 years, and so they do very well in captivity.
Why are reptiles cold-blooded? Is it a survival instinct?
Now you notice I'm not gripping him, I'm just allowing him to actually sit on my hand. My hand's quite warm. Reptiles are cold-blooded. They do need to be warm for their body to function properly, but they get that heat usually from the sun, which is why you find more reptiles in warm tropical countries than you do in, say, Britain.
We've had lots of questions come in. Thank you. Josh from Hale Primary School asks, what makes a reptile a reptile?
First thing is scaly skin. It's got a backbone, a vertebrate, therefore it's a vertebrate, just like mammals and birds and other things. It's got relatively short legs, usually 4 of them, but there are some reptiles with just 2 legs, and there are some reptiles, obviously like snakes, with no legs whatsoever. Also you can see it breathing. These have lungs, so they breathe air. They've got claws for climbing, and usually a long tail. In some species the tail can be many times the length of the actual body of the animal. However, snakes, it's the opposite. People think a snake is all tail, but it's not. It's all body with a short tail at the end. This one lays eggs. Nearly all reptiles lay eggs. 1 or 2 do keep the eggs in the body and have live babies, but they all develop from eggs, which are inside the body as it's growing. Some are hard and some are soft. And obviously the cold-blooded, they don't make their own body heat, but they do like to be warm, and they rely on the sun for that. They'll sit and bask in the sun, they'll warm up almost to the same body temperature that we maintain ourselves. They don't maintain ourselves, they eat far less than us because a lot of our energy is taken up making our body warm.
Right.
They don't need to do that, they rely on the sun.
That is incredible. Let's put some of our knowledge into practice now. It's time for our very first activity, so on your handout you need to tick the reptile. Take a look at the different creatures and tick the reptiles that you spot. Best of luck! How did you get on? Here are the answers on the screen. I wonder how the pupils at Churchill Primary School have been getting on. Let's move on to reptile habitats now. Mike, what do all of these reptiles have in common?
Well, they're all geckos, just like the leopard gecko, but they all come from different habitats. The leopard gecko, if you remember, lives in the deserts of Afghanistan and Pakistan.
And he had a very fat tail, didn't he?
For storing food when food is hard to find. This one on the left here, my left, is a crested gecko from the island of New Caledonia, and it lives in the tropical rainforests there. It spends virtually all of its time on the trees, which is why it's brown and really well camouflaged for life on the bark. And the crest are all these little sort of fringes around its eyes and head, which help to break up its outline, so it doesn't look, when it's pressed against the bark of a tree, it doesn't look like a lizard. It just looks like part of the bark.
Looks like he has some amazing eyelashes there, doesn't it?
Yeah, right over each eye. Big eyes again. It can't blink. All geckos are usually nocturnal. Some aren't, but most of them are. And they have this sort of contact lens over each eye, like snakes do, which doesn't allow them to blink, but does give them protection. And they've got great big eyes for seeing at night. But they keep them clean by licking them. Their tongue can come out and they can lick, which a snake can't do. It can lick each eye to clean it, so it can see very well at night time. So this is the crested gecko. Now here we have a gecko from the dry forest, the tropical forest of Madagascar. It's a big gecko, it lives during the day, and its name is the Madagascan giant green day gecko. That describes it in its name. It's actually during the day, it sits out in the sun, but it does spend nearly all day on the leaves of the tree, which is why it's green, where it's pretty well camouflaged.
Jamie from Hale Primary School asks, why do geckos have sticky fingers?
Now if I just rotate this slightly, if I can, you'll see its feet allow it to cling to the glass. Now this is brand new glass, it's very smooth, and yet those feet, the pads on its toes, allow it to cling and even climb up the glass. And this is one of the features of most geckos,
wow,
their ability to climb. And if I were to continue and turn it right upside down, it can actually hold on without falling off, because you often find them on undersides of leaves as well. So there he is, able to cling. Those toes are very, very well adapted for climbing. And here we have some species from a gecko from New Zealand. New Zealand's climate is very similar to ours. Now most geckos are found in hot countries. New Zealand is lovely in parts, but in some places it's cold. These geckos, they're very dark, they absorb the heat of the sun because they do sit and bask during the day as well as coming out at night. But the special feature about these geckos, which these don't have, these geckos lay eggs. It's quite cold in New Zealand, so these geckos keep the eggs inside the body and give birth just to 2 fully formed babies where the eggs hatch once they're born. And the New Zealand geckos are pretty unique for having that feature.
Wow. Reptiles are really scaling new heights when it comes to adapting. It's now time to move on to our next activity. Where do these reptiles live? You've heard lots of interesting information there, so now let's record it. You either need to write the name of the habitat underneath the animal pictures using the word bank, or have a go matching the 3 animals and their habitats. Have a go with that now. Welcome back. I wonder how pupils at New Scotland Hill have been getting on. Take a little look at the answers on the screen. You can see them now. We're going to have a little look at an amazing reptile that has done some amazing adapting. Is that right?
Here's a chameleon, right? As well as some adaptations and changes in its body, its eyes, its feet, everything else, it's got this amazing prehensile tail, which you can see is wrapped around the branch.
Is that a little bit like a monkey's?
Just like some monkeys use, and it acts like a 5th limb. So it can actually hang from the branch just by its tail. So it gives it much more versatility when it's in the trees and it's hunting insect prey.
Lincoln from Hale Primary School asks, how did chameleons adapt to change colour?
It can go from brown to green, even nearly black. If it sees another male or a female nearby, it can change colour really, really quickly. During the day, if it's in the leaves in the trees, it's green. If it's on the trunks of the tree, it's brown. I always go hunting for chameleons at night, because at night they go white. And if you walk around the trees with a torch, you can see them sitting in the trees, and they've got no idea that they need to be a different colour because they're fast asleep. But it's one of the most amazing creatures. There's so many adaptations and changes that this animal has, all in one particular species.
Well, I think it's a perfect time to play our chameleon spotting game. I wonder if you can remember any of the chameleon facts that Mike has just told us. Put on some keen searching eyes and discuss here. How do you think the chameleon has changed to fit in with its surroundings? Have fun and search for the chameleon. How did you get on? Were you able to spot the chameleon? Now, Mike, chameleons are masters at adapting to their environments rather quickly, but you've got some different reptiles here who have adapted, and they're very noisy, aren't they?
Yeah, you know they're here.
And they've adapted over a very long period of time, haven't they?
They have indeed. We're talking about the tortoises, turtles and terrapins. Turtles evolved in the sea. They were the first ones to evolve, and very quickly they led to the tortoises, which came onto land. So let's have a look at the tortoise. This is a typical tortoise. This one's called a horsefield tortoise, and it's really from Russia and a little bit further west. So it's a European type tortoise. It's not a tropical one. So the first thing you notice is its shell. Mm-hmm. All three, tortoise, turtle and terrapins, have a hard shell. And in the case of a tortoise, it's quite domed. It's quite high. If you look at a turtle, it's quite flat. These are quite high. There's the head. Got 4 legs, very powerful diggers, very strong claws. These things can burrow down into the hardest earth possible. And their shell is more or less round, and that's important because when they dig a burrow, it means they can turn around at the bottom of the burrow and come back out, rather than have to back out. All burrowing tortoises are usually round. The elongated tortoises can't do that because they're the wrong shape. So the legs at the back. The females, this is a male, it's got a big tail. Males have big tails, females have a short tail. And the female that uses these 2 hind legs for digging the hole in which she will lay her eggs. Now, interestingly, the lungs of a tortoise are at the top, which is quite handy if you happen to fall into water, because it means that you can float like this, and your head is near enough to the top of your shell to be able to breathe, and you don't drown. They lay eggs, and even though there's not much distance between these 2 parts of the shell, they lay hard-shelled eggs like that.
Right.
And they're like a bird's egg. They're hard and calcium. So they lay these in a hole in the ground, 4, 6, maybe 8 in the case of a small tortoise like this, and they cover them over, then forget about them. They leave them in the sun, and 3 months later, a little tiny baby tortoise will hatch, and it's called Any ideas?
A creature hatching out?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not going to be something like Bob.
No, or Fred. It's
Right.
called a hatchling.
Right.
And we have a 1-year-old tortoise here. So it's taken a year to get that size. And if you look carefully at the scales, the shell scales, you'll see it's like the rings of a tree. There are little circles where it's grown around the edges all sides.
Yes.
So all the little parts of the shell grow equally. You can't age it by the number of rings.
Right.
This is 1 year old, and there's about 6 rings around each shell, each scale. But that's a good indication that it's a healthy tortoise because there's plenty of growth rings on it.
Okay.
Then after 2.5 years, they'll reach this size. Then after about 8 or 9 years, they'll reach this size. And this tortoise is probably about 25 now. It'll live for another 25 years at least.
Oh, so that they can live for about 50 years?
50 years, even longer. People have recorded 80 years.
Wow.
The longest living vertebrate is a giant tortoise from Aldabra that we know is at least 240 years old.
Wow.
And it's still alive now. So,
Fascinating.
yeah. So they're the tortoises.
So what are the main differences between a tortoise like this and a turtle?
Turtle shells, as you can see, they're not very domed, they're flat for swimming, and they don't have claws and legs, they have flippers, front and back.
Okay. And the creature you got here, the very noisy creature, trying to climb up the side there, this isn't a turtle or a tortoise, no?
No, it's halfway between the two. This is called a terrapin. So terrapins probably evolved from tortoises. So turtles lived in the sea, evolved into tortoises that came onto the land, and some of those that were on the land decided to go into fresh water, and they evolved into terrapins.
It's turtly awesome. Sorry. I wonder if we can celebrate our new turtle knowledge with our next activity. Are you not enjoying these jokes? Sorry.
Bizarre. Sorry.
You need to compare between a turtle and a tortoise. How have they been adapted to live on land or water? You're going to need to either label the tortoise here or use some of the images that we provided to help you discuss some similarities and differences. Maybe you could even type your favourite fact in the chat. Good luck! Welcome back, everyone. I hope all at Khalsa Primary School are doing well with their discussions. Take a little look at some of the answers on the screen now.
This is a garter snake from North America. Now, snakes can kill or overpower their prey in various ways. The garter snake is semi-aquatic. You find it near lakes, rivers, streams, because it feeds mainly on fish, frogs, newts, and other aquatic animals like that. It can detect them with its tongue, and it just pounces and swallows. And it usually simply swallows them alive. That's the easiest thing to do. A fish isn't going to struggle very much. You can overpower a frog, they just swallow them alive. Right, so here's a king snake. This is another North American species, mainly terrestrial. You find it living under logs and out in the desert sometimes. This one, as you can see, is very brightly coloured. But this snake detects its prey with its tongue like any other snake, but it kills by constriction. Now, a lot of people think that constriction means it crushes its prey to death, but it doesn't do that. It's much more subtle than that. When it seizes a lizard or a small mouse or even another snake, it wraps its body around it, and then when its prey breathes out, it tightens its grip, which doesn't allow the prey to breathe in again. And once it succumbs to that, it can then turn around and swallow its prey, usually head first, because things are more streamlined when they swallow them head first. So this is what we would call a constrictor, and that's how it kills its prey. Yeah, so this one hunts things like lizards, small mammals, mice, kangaroo rats, that sort of thing, and even other snakes. It can actually feed on venomous species like the rattlesnake.
So I noticed its colouring makes it seem like it's poisonous?
Yeah, it's a warning colour, but it's actually mimicking another species of snake that lives in the same habitat.
So it's time for activity 4. Discuss the garter snake and the king snake. Remember, the garter snake likes to live near water, while the king snake lives in the forests and deserts, but both live in North America. Use your handout to see if you can stretch yourself to consider if the snake is venomous or a constrictor. And so you've brought in here a boa constrictor.
It's a boa constrictor, Matt, yes. It's a very large snake. It's not quite fully grown yet. It's got a little bit more growing to do. This one's probably nearly 2 meters, maybe just under 2 meters. And it's an arboreal species. It spends a lot of time in the tree as well as on the ground. And it is a constrictor. Yeah. hence the name boa constrictor, because it kills its prey, again, not by crushing, even though it's very, very powerful. It kills its prey by suffocation, by tightening its grip. You can see the muscles in its body.
Yeah.
They can wrap around the prey, and every time that prey breathes out,
It just
tightens the grip, can't breathe in.
I can see it's flicking out its tongue a lot as well. Is that doing a similar thing of...
It's sensing its environment. It's thinking, oh, I've not tasted a table before like this, and is there anything in the air that's worth eating? I must say it's pretty well fed, so the chances of him being hungry are pretty remote.
So where would you usually find these kind of snakes?
Boa constrictors are from Central and South America. They range all the way from sort of Mexico all the way down into Argentina. And they're all very similar, but some are got slightly different coloration and patterning. Some have got more reds on them. This is quite a normal coloured boa constrictor for the species. They feed on a whole variety of things, from mammals. This could probably take a mammal about the size of certainly rats, small rabbits, that sort of thing, little monkeys, iguanas in the trees, lizards.
And would they need to eat something like that every day? Or?
No, once they've had a meal like that, they'll sit and digest it over several days, and they probably don't have to feed for another week or so at least.
And is the tail very similar to the other snakes that we've seen?
Yeah, tail's quite short. The tail starts here in this species, so maybe 20 centimetres long. And the thing about it is that we know that snakes evolved from lizards, and we can tell that in the boa constrictor, because if we look at the base of the tail, where the tail meets the body, there are still the remnants of a little claw either side. But they changed from lizards that chose a burrowing existence. And if you live in a burrow, legs can often get in the way. So their legs got shorter and shorter. And we have many burrowing lizards now which are legless. And the snakes are evolved from those that lost all the legs.
So this snake isn't venomous, no?
No, it's not venomous. I wouldn't be allowed to do this if he was venomous. I wouldn't be allowed to keep him without a special license, which you need for dangerous wild animals.
And what kind of venomous snake could you talk about?
I'll put this one away, and then we'll come and discuss the rattlesnake.
Okay. Okay, so the boa constrictor aside, you said that there are some snakes that are a lot more venomous.
They are venomous. They are completely venomous, and some very venomous. And that's why there isn't one in front of me now. But we do have the tooth of one in front of me now. Yeah. This is the venom fang from a rattlesnake. Rattlesnake, they're North American. There are lots of different species. Some are very small, less than 1/2 metre. Some are very big, well over 2.5 metres in length. They're some of the biggest venomous snakes there are. They feed on a variety of prey, such as warm-blooded animals like small rabbits, rats, even the odd lizard, that sort of thing. And they overcome their prey with venom. They will strike, and the head will go backwards, and the two fangs will go forward like that and inject the venom, and then they will retreat and protect those fangs. We have developed anti-serums for most species. So if you were bitten by a rattlesnake in Texas, say, most hospitals, if they have the anti-serum, you can get it into you very quickly. You've got a good chance of survival.
Well, I've certainly learned a lot more about snakes from this. Thank you. It's been wonderful learning about the history of snakes and how they've adapted. Well, I wonder what your favourite snake fact is as well.
Excellent. It's time to finish activity 4 for the boa constrictor and the rattlesnake. Remember, the boa constrictor lives in the tropical rainforests of South America, while the rattlesnake lives in the forests and deserts of North and South America.
Hello, and I wonder how many facts Nutton St Mary's Primary School have found today. Now, Mike, on behalf of DE and everybody watching, thank you so much, and thank you to all your amazing guests today as well.
Pleasure.
It's been brilliant. Have a really wonderful Science Week from DE and Mike and all of your visitors. Goodbye.